The observation deck of Transit Hub 17 was supposed to be neutral ground. Emphasis on supposed to be. I've been stationed there for 3 cycles, monitoring the flow of traffic through one of the busiest transport hubs in the Galactic Coalition, and I'd seen my share of incidents. Territorial disputas. Cultural misunderstandings. The occasional philosophical debate that devolved into threats of violence. But I'd never seen anything quite like what happened when the human showed up. Her name was Victoria Kane. At least, that's what her identification chip said when I scanned it at the entry gate. She was average height for her species, maybe a bit taller, with dark hair pulled back in what humans call a ponytail and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. Not that I'd ever been to Earth, mind you. I just happened to have done extensive research on human biology after the first 3 humans passed through my station and scared the living daylights out of everyone within a 50-meter radius. Humans have this reputation, you see. They're the newcomers to the coalition, barely a decade into their membership, and already they've managed to become the subject of approximately 10,000 incident reports, 47 emergency protocols, and 1 very strongly worded advisory memo about their tendency to physically intervene in situations that do not require physical intervention. But Victoria seemed harmless enough when she arrived. She nodded politely at me, purchased something called coffee from the beverage dispensary, which smelled like burnt soil and despair, and settled into a corner seat to wait for her connecting shuttle. She even smiled at a Vexian child who wandered too close to her table. The Vexian mother nearly had a cardiac episode, but the human just waved and went back to her data pad. Everything was fine. Peaceful. Boring even. Then Kravik showed up. Now, I should probably mention that Kravik was a DRA cache. Big species. Aggressive species. The kind of species that evolved on a planet where everything, including the plants, was actively trying to murder everything else. They stand roughly 7 feet tall, have scales like armor plating, and possess enough physical strength to bend steel support beams. They're also convinced that they're the apex predators of the galaxy, which, to be fair, was pretty accurate until humans came along. Kravik swaggered onto the observation deck like he owned the place, which technically he didn't, because the Coalition owns all transit hubs, but try telling that to a DRA cache who's had too much fermented Zix root. His tail swept a tray off a table. His shoulder knocked a Beltorian clear into a support column. He was looking for trouble, and by the 6 moons of Kelter, he found it. Or rather, it found him, because Victoria Kane, who'd been minding her own business in the corner, stood up. Not quickly, not aggressively. She just stood and walked directly into his path. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying that particularly dangerous kind of calm that I'd learned to recognize in humans. "You need to watch where you're going. You just injured someone." The entire observation deck went silent. And I mean silent. The kind of silence that happens right before something catastrophic like a reactor breach or a solar flare. Even the automated announcements seemed to pause. Kravik looked down at her. Way down. Then he laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Little mammal thinks she can address me?" He leaned closer, his breath probably toxic enough to violate several atmospheric regulations. "Move. Or be moved. Here's what I expected to happen." Victoria would back down. Apologize. Scurry away like any sensible being confronted by a predator twice her size and 3 times her mass. Here's what actually happened. She didn't move. Didn't even blink. I said. She repeated, each word crisp and clear. "You need to watch where you're going. That Beltorian might have fractured his spine because you're too self-important to pay attention. Apologize, help him to medical, and we can forget this happened." Oh, sweet celestial bodies. She'd just given a DRA cache an order. Kravik's laugh cut off like someone had flipped a switch. His eyes, all 3 of them, narrowed into slits. "You dare?" "I absolute ridare." Victoria crossed her arms. "What are you going to do about it?" What happened next happened fast. Kravik's hand shot out, massive and clawed, and shoved Victoria. Not a gentle push. A full-force shove designed to send her flying across the deck. In DRA cache culture, this was a dominance display. A warning. A promise of worse things to come. Victoria stambed backward. 3 steps. 4. Her coffee cup clattered to the floor. And then she stopped, steadied herself, and smiled. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. I recognized that smile. I'd seen it in training videos, in documentary footage, in classified files marked "Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." It was a human combat smile. Okay, Victoria said, rolling her shoulders. You want to do this? Let's do this. She moved. I'm still not entirely sure how. One moment, she was 10 feet away from Kravik. The next, she was inside his guard, both hands gripping his arm. And then she lifted. A DRA cache. 7 feet tall. 400 pounds of muscle, scale, and predatory arrogance. She lifted him. Actually lifted him off the deck floor. Kravik's expression cycled through confusion, shock, and pure existential terror in approximately 2 seconds. Victoria pivoted. Smoothly. Efficiently. Like she'd done this 1,000 times before. And threw him. Not just pushed. Not just moved. Through. Kravik sailed through the air, across the observation deck, and directly off the edge of the raised platform. To be fair, it was only a 4-foot drop, and there were safety cushions below. But still, the observation deck remained silent for exactly 5 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. Victoria dusted off her hands like she'd just finished taking out the recycling instead of launching a DRA cache warrior through the air like a sack of grain. She glanced around the observation deck, seemed to register the absolute chaos of panicked aliens scrambling in every direction, and had the audacity to look confused. What? She asked nobody in particular. He started. I activated my communicator with trembling appendages. Security to observation deck 17. We have a situation, right? That was one way to describe watching a human casually violate every known law of physics and common sense. The Beltorian who'd been knocked into the column was staring at Victoria with all 4 of his eyes wide enough to fall out of his skull. A group of Mytharian traders had pressed themselves against the far wall, their translator devices chattering in 17 different languages of alarm. And Kravik? Kravik was climbing back onto the platform, scales bristling, all 3 eyes blazing with the kind of rage that typically preceded planetary invasions. You, he hissed, hauling himself up with his claws digging grooves into the deck plating. You dare lay hands on a DRA cache warrior? I will tear you limb from limb. I will scatter your remains across the void. I will make you regret the day your pathetic species crawled out of whatever primordial soup spawned you. Victoria Said actually sighed. Like this was tedious. Yeah, okay, big guy. I'm sure you will. Right after you explained to station security why you assaulted multiple civilians in a coalition-protected zone. She pulled out her datapad, tapped it a few times, and turned it toward him. Smile. That's 17 camera angles. All showing you starting this. The color drained from Kravik's scales. While the color shifted, technically, DRA cache don't exactly drain so much as they turn a sort of pale greenish gray when confronted with irrefutable evidence of their own stupidity. This is, he sputtered. Illegal? Yep. Violates about 40 different transit hub regulations? Absolutely. Likely to get you banned from coalition space for at least 5 cycles? Oh, definitely. Victoria smiled again, but this time it was less combat and more smug satisfaction. And here's a wild thought, you could apologize to everyone you've terrorized today, pay for any damages, and we all walk away from this without involving the authorities. I'd never seen a DRA cache look uncertain before. Murderous? Sure. Aggressive? Daily. But uncertain? That was new. Kravik glanced around the observation deck, at the cameras, at the witnesses, at me, standing there with my communicator still active and security probably already on their way. Then back at Victoria, who stood there like she had all the time in the universe, completely unbothered by the massive predator looming over her. His shoulders, massive and scaled, slumped. Fine, he growled. Fine. I apologize for my aggressive behavior. I will compensate anyone I may have injured. Great. See how easy that was. Victoria beamed at him like a teacher praising a particularly slow student. Now help me get this gentleman to medical. I think you actually did hurt him. And that's how I watched a human and a DRA Kesh warrior carry an injured Beltorian to the medical bay. Working together like this wasn't the single most bizarre thing to happen on my station in 17 years of service. Security arrived 6 minutes later, led by Commander Taurix, who took one look at the situation, looked at me, and said very quietly, "Please tell me that's not another human incident." Well, I gestured helplessly at Victoria, who was now chatting with Kravik about proper lifting techniques while the medical staff tended to the Beltorian. Technically, she was defending others. They've been in the coalition for 10 years. 10. And they account for 63% of our incident reports. To be fair, sir, they also account for 78% of successful civilian interventions in dangerous situations. That's not helping. By the time everything was sorted out, statements taken, and apologies formally logged, Victoria's shuttle was boarding. She collected her bag, waved goodbye to Kravik, who actually waved back looking thoroughly confused about his own life choices, and headed for the gate. I stopped her. Couldn't help myself. "Excuse me, Miss Kane?" She turned, eyebrows raised. "Yeah? How did you? I mean, Kravik outweighs you by at least 250 pounds. How did you throw him like that?" Victoria grinned. "Oh, that? Judo. It's all about leverage and momentum. You use their weight against them. Plus, I grew up with 4 brothers and worked construction for 6 years before joining the merchant fleet. You learn to handle things bigger than you." She paused. Also, and I cannot stress this enough, that guy was way off balance. "Made it easy." "Easy?" She said easy, right? "Of course. Easy. Hey, don't worry about it." She patted my shoulder, which I'm fairly certain violated 3 different protocols about physical contact with station personnel. Most species in the coalition evolved as prey animals or social cooperators. You guys aren't wired for physical confrontation. Humans. We're persistence hunters. We're climbers. We're throwers. We literally evolved to chase things until they died of exhaustion and to hurl rocks at stuff that annoyed us. She gestured vaguely at the observation deck. "This is just Tuesday for us. Just Tuesday. The casual end of galactic peace and the established predator hierarchy was just Tuesday for humans." "Well, thank you for your intervention," I managed. "Though perhaps next time you could contact security first?" "Yeah, probably." She didn't sound convinced. "But where's the fun in that?" She boarded her shuttle, leaving me standing there contemplating the sheer cosmic irony that the galaxy's newest members, these bizarre primates from a backwater planet, had somehow become the thing that other predators checked under their beds for at night. Kravik approached as I was filing my report. He looked different, smaller, somehow, despite being exactly the same size. "That human," he said quietly. "What did she say her species evolved from?" "Persistence hunters, apparently." He shuddered. All 7 feet of apex predator shuddered. "Yeah, probably." She didn't sound convinced. "But where's the fun in that?" She boarded her shuttle, leaving me standing there contemplating the sheer cosmic irony that the galaxy's newest members, these bizarre primates from a backwater planet, had somehow become the thing that other predators checked under their beds for at night. Kravik approached as I was filing my report. He looked different, smaller, somehow, despite being exactly the same size. "That human," he said quietly. "What did she say her species evolved from?" "Persistence hunters, apparently." He shuddered. All 7 feet of apex predator shuddered. So what did you think? Did this story surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this sci-fi story, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing science fiction stories every week. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.